Good evening and welcome to All for United, the Women's Football Chat Show. Brilliant show lined up for everybody tonight. Joining us, we have got Dee Bradley of Durham Women. Dee, how are you doing and welcome to the show?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be on.
It's an absolute pleasure, and obviously we're looking forward to chatting about your career. We're chatting about Durham's season as a whole, playing in America, and a little bit on Man United as well. John as well from Get Pro Academy. How are you doing?
I'm good. Good, thanks, Matt, Gareth, Dee. How are you all?
All good, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, and co-hosting as well tonight, as always on a Tuesday. Gareth, how are we?
Yeah, good, thank you. It's strange to be back live now. The National League season is finished.
I know we was getting some stick for that as well for not being live, but like you said, season's done. So yeah, it's good to be back. Dee, obviously we'll start with you then. Obviously, talking about your career, really. If you want to sort of talk to me about how you got into football, things like that.
Yeah, so ever since I can remember, I had a ball at my feet. I have 3 brothers. I have a twin brother. So I just grew up always playing with him. And at the age of 4 or 5, I would say we got into like a little micro soccer team in the area. And it was just every Saturday go out and play. But as I got older, I would play with my brother, and my dad was my coach. And I would also play on the local girls team as well. So I was just playing for 2 teams, which is kind of the absolute dream for any child. But yeah, I was lucky to have my dad as my coach, and I think I might be a little biased, but he is one of the best coaches I've ever had. And I played with boys up until about the age of 13. And then I decided that I wanted to take it to the next level, and I went to like a travel squad around 13, 14. And we traveled all over the country. I mean, like California, Florida, Texas, like you name it, we were all over. And that experience as a whole was just unbelievable. And that's where I got seen by my college coach. And from there I was at Old Dominion.
Yeah. So in terms of that, then obviously you talked about, playing with your brother and obviously playing with the boys then. In terms of like opportunities in America then, what was it like? Was there not many girls teams around, or was it something that maybe where you were based that there wasn't maybe the opportunities that are possibly there now for sort of young girls in football?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was quite lucky. I definitely had girls football near me. There was quite a few teams, and it was quite competitive where I was. So I was very lucky, but I always enjoyed playing with the boys. I thought it was more competitive. I thought it was more physical. And I would say some people probably think now that it plays a part in the way I play today. But yeah, I just always wanted to play. So because my dad was my brother's coach, he kind of helped me get into playing with boys and just allowed me to crack on, really.
Yeah. And obviously you talk about sort of, growing up, playing there in boys teams. How has that maybe shaped how you play today then? Because obviously, if we speak shortly about the difference in between sort of playing in America and playing in England, how did that sort of help your game?
Yeah, I think playing with boys, being the only girl on the pitch with all boys, I kind of had to prove myself, and I didn't take anything from anyone. I had no fear, and I think that's the way I kind of play today. I don't hesitate. I don't like to back down from things. I just get in there. So it's definitely a bit more physical than most girls at a young age. And I would definitely play that into playing with boys. But as for comparing like American football and football here, I definitely think it's more technical here. I think a lot of players growing up in the U.S. can kind of get away with being a little bit more athletic. And I think that was the biggest difference for me playing at college and playing here, was the athleticism and technical ability.
Yeah. And obviously, I believe as well, obviously, you had a scholarship at Old Dominion. Obviously, John, I'll sort of bring you in here as well, because you're I'll say an expert compared to me on scholarships. John, do you want to talk to me about sort of the American scholarships from your point of view and sort of what they offer and sort of how that works for those that may not know?
Yeah, well, what's one of the things we actually do is offer or look to get girls a scholarship to play football in America, which always helps. In fact, Dee is one of the people that is working with us. So Dee's a massive help to us because obviously not only is she from America, she's actually done the system. She knows what it's about. And there's a coach who is one of Dee's friends called Sam Thomas. He's an amazing guy. Basically, it's such a technical process where it's done on academia and also on football ability. But each college or university looks at the academic results in a slightly different way, which is why you need an expert. So having someone like Sam on board with us is amazing. And also Dee, they can look at opportunities for the girls we've got. They can be creative where they're placed because they know the system inside out. And it's for us, it's just about providing girls who want that opportunity, have the wish, but also the desire to go and live abroad for 4 years. It's a hard thing to do when you're 18, and as quite rightly pointed out to us and to some of our girls that we've had Zooms with by Dee and Sam, it's not just about finding the right college for the subject that you want. If you get injured and you can't play football, you've got to actually, your time, you have to go and find somewhere in the surroundings that you like doing for like a hobby. So it's much more than just saying, I want to go there or I want to do this. Obviously, in an ideal world, the college that provides one of the best programs for the subject you want to study believes in your academic ability and your football ability, and you get the scholarship you want, and it's in a great area. But that's always not the case. And Dee's quite rightly pointed out in the past, it can get quite depressing and lonely for some girls. So it's also important to get to know your college, get to know your coach, and some of this, and quickly get to know the people in your team or your squad, because you do need people around you when you're so far away from home. Yeah. I don't mean to be depressing. I'm just trying to point out, all the points.
No, yeah.
It's a great thing when it comes down to it. Dee's already said she went on a travel squad, and when you go away in England, you get in a car or you get on a bus. In America, a lot of away games you get on a plane. You know what I mean? It's it's wow, and you play in great facilities. You can play in front of 2,000 to 3,000 people every week at college. So yeah, it's amazing.
Super. Gareth, you wanted to expand on obviously that?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, what are the kind of primary benefits of the collegiate system in the US? Because we're seeing more and more girls from the UK going over there. Alessia Russo at United is an example. Ash Prompter at Leicester, another. What are the main benefits of going over there and playing football at college in America?
Dee, do you want to take this or?
Yeah, I can take it. First and foremost, I think the academic side of things is always incredible. It doesn't matter where you go. If you get a 4 years bachelor degree under your belt, I think that sets you up for life outside of football. So I think that's one of the most important things that you can take from a 4-year university. But as for a player's development, I think when you go to college, you're 17, 18, maybe even 19 years old. And I think people may think you're in your peak or you're going towards your peak of your career, but you're still so young, you're still a kid. So I think playing at a collegiate level, you learn a lot about yourself as a player, and you're able to grow and adapt. And it's funny because the U.S. college system, the way it's played, you have 3 months of just playing games, and then you get a break, and then you go back for the spring season. So it's a lot of games in a short period of time, and I think you learn more from games, and I think it's a great way for players to develop their game.
Yeah. What I want to ask Dee is how do you find obviously balancing football and studying at the time? Because obviously, being away from home is sort of one thing, and then obviously, as John mentioned, flying to games, balancing the sort of the whole education and football thing. How did you find that, or maybe what was the approach, if you could maybe offer advice to people looking to do that, sort of to balance out the two things?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's not the easiest of things. But growing up, I was always told that if I didn't keep up my academic side of things, I wasn't allowed to play football. So I think at a young age, my parents would say, all right, we're going to take your phone away if you don't do this. But I was secretly like, yes, like you can take my phone all you want. But they realized that I might need to get punished with football. So if my grades weren't up to par, then I wasn't playing football. So for me, I always had that in myself to kind of keep my grades at a decent level. And school never came easy to me either. So it was definitely something I had to put the work in for. But in college, you really don't have time to procrastinate. You only have time to go to class. You have training twice a day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And on the weekends during the season, every other weekend you're away. And a lot of the times you leave on the Thursday, play on the Friday, travel on the Saturday, and play on the Sunday. And sometimes you wouldn't get back until the Monday. So it was a lot to balance, but I think a lot of the professors at school understand that athletes are away. They're a bit more understanding with things. But yeah, I mean, in terms of advice, I would say that it's just time management. You have to do it, and if you don't do it, unfortunately, you won't be able to play. So it's either keep your studies up and play, or don't, and you can't play.
Yeah, and obviously on that as well, how would you sort of go about picking the right place to study? Because obviously America's massive compared to England, and I suppose here when you're sort of picking like a college or a university, it's quite easy to travel. But how would you maybe go through that process? Is that something where you can maybe, you know, speak to people that have maybe been there, or is that something you kind of just have a look yourself and maybe read up on and then sort of go from there?
Yeah, I mean, like, you can just go on the university's website and just see what they offer. I know for me, I always wanted to be involved in sport, whether that be coaching, whether that be sports management, anything involving sport. So I knew that I was looking for a school that was able to offer a sports management degree, because that's something that I was interested in. It's hard because when you're looking for colleges, you're between the ages of 15 to 17, and it's so young to decide what you want. So a lot of the times you can go in undecided, because your first year and a half, almost 2 years, is all the general classes, like your history, your math, your science. So you have time to figure out what you want. But I would recommend picking a school that has a lot of diversity, unless you know exactly what you want.
Yeah. And John, again, coming back to you, obviously, I know. Go on.
Yeah. I was just going to say, we've got a magic, what I call a magic tool on this, and it's nothing to do with me. It's all thanks to Sam, who's a coach and, as I said, is Dee's friend. We've actually got a link that we send to all the girls, and as far as I know, and I will stand corrected, a lot of the big companies don't use it. And it's basically a web link, and down the side, it's got little filter boxes. You know, like when you're trying to find a hotel or an Airbnb or something, and it goes through everything, subject you want, even things like if you want to work in study in a particular state, or if you want hot weather or cold weather. Honestly, it covers everything. And one of the girls we did, there's I think over 1,300 colleges, she got it down to 22 for the subject that she wants. And it may end up not being ideal, because you may not find all the conditions that you want, but it's so amazing if you think you've got 1,300 to choose from and where do I start, to actually there's 22 that are perfect matches for me. So that's one thing, as I said, it's nothing to do with me, but for me it's a magic link, and everyone we sent it to has just said it's absolutely brilliant. And then the feedback comes to us, and then we get poor Dee and Sam on the case, and they're the ones that get it home. And we've just got to make sure their football ability is high enough for that side of the scholarship, because the scholarship's split into two. So we've just got to make sure their football's good enough to match their academics.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
You've pretty much covered. No, you've covered what I was going to ask. Anyway, I was going to sort of ask the process from sort of the Get Pro Academy side, and obviously advising young girls, and you've pretty much nailed it there. And like you say, I think having that sort of, I don't know, should we call it a table or that little search box? I think that probably narrows it down as well, doesn't it? Because like you say, if you're someone that's looking for something specific, and especially if you're going to be, you know, there for the next few years as well, it's a big decision and probably a big step as well. I want to then, Dee, obviously touch on the 2 injuries you had, obviously the ACLs and sort of going through that. And then obviously, John, you can sort of link in after that. Obviously, you got your first ACL, battled back from that. And then I read you took some time out of football for a bit, sort of after recovering from that injury. Did it ever sort of cross your mind, obviously, when you were taking that break, that, you know, it's going to be difficult to get back into football? Or was that something where you thought you'd rather just sort of get yourself physically and mentally sorted before sort of jumping back into football? And obviously, if you want to discuss your sort of your rehab as well, and everything, how that came about as well.
Yeah, of course. So in 2017, that was my last year of college. So at the second game of the season, I tore my ACL, and I got surgery, and 3 months later, I was still in a brace and wasn't able to bend my knee. And so they had to go back in for manipulation, which is basically they just put you under and they try and break through all the scar tissue. And so I was able to bend my knee after that and kind of carry on with my rehab process. I didn't have the smoothest of rides. I always had something wrong, like whether it be my hamstring, whether it be my patellar tendonitis, something. It was one thing after another. But so it took me about 1.5 years the first time around to get my clearance to play again. And that was really tough, both physically and mentally, because all I wanted to do was just play. So I came back, I did my 5th year, I managed the full season, and then in the new year, so I finished my season in November time, and in January of 2019, I went to actually Reading for a week trial. And there was something just not right with my knee. I just could feel it. I felt a pop when I was there, and I just was like, it's fine. It didn't hurt. So I went back to college, started training again, and my knee just kept giving out. So then went to the doctor, and he was like, let me just do a scan. Got the scan back, and I tore the same ACL twice in the same knee. So I was absolutely devastated after that news, because I genuinely didn't think I wanted to I couldn't fathom doing that process again because it was so tough the first time. So I was like, you know what? I can do this, because I was looking up different athletes that were in the NFL, the NWSL, and they've torn their ACL twice, 3 times, and are still playing at the highest of levels. So I told myself, stop feeling sorry for yourself. Let's get the surgery and just see where it goes. So in the back of my mind, I always said to myself, just keep pushing, keep going as far as you can. And if you can get the opportunity, take it. And if it doesn't work out, then you can say you've tried everything. So I got rehab when I was at home, and I was with 2 of the best ACL people in the world. I can't speak any higher of them both. And genuinely, I feel like if it weren't for the 2 of them, I wouldn't be playing today. I was 4 days post-op in a pool. I was moving my leg. I was on like a little skier's edge thing 4 weeks post-op. Like, I was absolutely flying. And it was 2 weeks, it was my second ACL. And I was doing things 2 weeks post-op that I wasn't even doing 4 months post-op the last time. So the difference between the 2 was night and day, really. But after that, after I was able to get cleared, and it was about 1 year post-op, COVID hit. So my intention was to go to Durham right after I graduated college, and then obviously tore the ACL again. But then after, I would say, July, August time, I was speaking to Lee Sanders, who was willing to give me a shot and help me with getting into the Durham squad. And he basically, he was very honest with me, and he said, look, I've never seen you play. It's your second ACL. But you can come, you can do everything, but I can't guarantee you any minutes. And to be honest with you, I was totally fine with that because all I wanted was just a chance. So he let me come, he let me train with the team, and then in this, January of 2021, I was able to sign and travel with the team. So, but yeah, it was a crazy process. I feel like I could talk about my ACL journey all day, but yeah, it was a crazy one.
And how did you kind of keep yourself focused and like keep your head in the right space, particularly during that second injury where it must have seemed like it potentially was more serious because it's the same knee happening twice. Like, how did you keep yourself like mentally well during that time as well?
To be honest with you, it was my family, my friends. I had the best support system I could probably ask for. My parents were so supportive. To be honest, when I tore the same knee twice, I told my parents that I wanted to keep trying to play, and part of me thought that they'd be like, "Look, Dee, it's time to move on, time to maybe look at the next step in life." But they were so supportive. They helped me with just about everything. So I think having a good support system is super important in it because it's such a long process. Because it's a minimum of 9 months. So yeah, I think having a good support system, I've spoke to John about it. I think talking about it is huge. I think if you can kind of talk about your good days, talk about your bad days, because it's a constant roller coaster, really. So yeah, I would say those two things help me get through the process.
John, I want to bring you in here as well, because I know a player you've had involved with Get Pro Academy also suffered an ACL injury, and obviously that was something where, again, you sort of provided support. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about that? And also, obviously, we've had conversations, haven't we? You were telling me about, sort of what you'd read and things you'd known about ACL injuries being common in women's football. So if you want to put that in there as well, and yeah, we'll go with that.
Yeah. First of all, I thought it was me. I thought I was a bit of a jinx because probably two of the best players I've ever coached at grassroots level both have ACLs. One was about 3 or 4 years ago, a week after we got her into Chelsea. She snapped her cruciate ligament doing long jump at school in sports day, which was a bit of a blow. And she was of that age by the time she come back. She'd had other interests. The second player is now of a similar age. She was in England camp at under 16, playing for London Bees, and she snapped her cruciate ligament. She's been playing with the idea for the last year. She was unfortunate because her operation was delayed so long because of COVID. We luckily got her something through at Reading in the end, but her operation on the NHS was delayed so long because of COVID. She had everything going through her mind, if that makes sense. And she actually texted me 2 weeks ago and wanted me to start a program to give it one more shot to see if she can get the love back, which is really nice to see. Dee has kindly even said, give her a number and Dee will chat to her. And then regarding what you said about it, obviously there's Dee, Elenia's in recovery at the moment for hers, Arabella Sutty, who actually almost had something similar to Dee, where her recovery was stalling because of all the scar tissues as she went in for a second operation to have that cleared away, and it actually hasn't added much time on because the leg's much better now to take on recovery. So yeah, it's very common, and I've been reading and done some research, and the female hips in that are in a slightly different placement or different placed in a slightly different way to men. Obviously hips and that do lots of different things for ladies and in general life. And I don't know how, it must be something that it's in a slightly different place, and there are experts that have said that it actually can make this, that either the knee slightly weaker, or the ligaments around the knee slightly weaker, or the positioning of them, so it affects the ligaments more. And we're starting to introduce programs. I will be speaking to Dee to help with that and head it. Obviously, Dee's an amazing person, great with all the girls, and I want to try and bring in some exercises at a young age that helps build the muscle, perhaps either around the knee or the top part of the leg. It may have no effect, but anything we can do that will help girls have less risk to this ACL injury as they grow up, because football's getting more and more physical. The under 11 at the moment are amazing, and they tackle as well. And under 11, there was hardly anything like that, and football's getting more physical again. I think it is, unless you get into the men's Premier League, then you can't really do anything. There's no tackle zone. Really, you're not allowed to do anything. But so that's what we're trying to do. Anything we can do to help girls, help the game. So we're going to try and come up with a program that helps the girls strengthen that part of the body or that area. And if it saves one girl, not that we'll ever know, but if it saves one girl from getting an ACL injury, it'll make us happy,
Yeah, absolutely. It is interesting though, like you said. Obviously, I know we'd had conversations on it. Like you said, and sort of conversations you mentioned there about strengthening it and really working with sort of athletes that you coach as well, John, to help sort of understand the body, especially at a young age as well. I think there's maybe not huge amounts, especially in education, where, you necessarily taught, you might be given obviously sort of your nutritional information, but really, I think getting to understand your own body probably comes with age and experience as well. I don't know if you want to add to that, Dee, whether sort of, with your education, whether that was ever part of it at all, sort of learning about your body, or was it just more like the football, nutrition, and education side when you studied?
I think the second time around, obviously, I was more aware of everything. I never did anything to prevent any injuries. Really, I mean, I grew up, I did Taekwondo, my whole family did, and I think that was a great way of being like stretching and this and that, but I never did it for injury prevention. I think now I think it helped. Yeah. But now I do knee stuff all the time, and I do what I can, and whatever I learned the first and second time through my rehab process, I definitely take with me today. But I think it's becoming more. I think people are learning about different ways to prevent it, and it's not necessarily going to say that it's going to prevent an ACL injury 100%, but anything people can do at a young age to start preventing those, I think, is becoming more and more common, which is great to see.
Yeah. Gareth, do you want to lead into chat on Durham?
Yeah, so when you signed for Durham, obviously coming over from America to the UK, how did you find that transition from college to adapting to the championship?
Yeah, so not only did I come from playing college football, I was coming off a second ACL. So my first touch of football after my second ACL injury was at Durham's training session. So it was a completely different environment. I hadn't kicked a ball properly in a training session in over a year. So there were so many different factors that kind of played a part into my first session, and it was kind of a shock. But I will say that as great as the U.S. like college soccer is, I think England's women's football is just a different level, and I think people tend to understand the game better. More females watch football here than they would at home. It wasn't common for people to get up on a Saturday and Sunday and watch the Premier League or watch whatever football was on that morning. So coming here and experiencing teammates that absolutely love the game. Anytime there's a game on, they'll put the football on the TV. It was so different. And I think it actually suited me better as a player and as a person as well. Like I just fit right in. And I think the European style is definitely something that I enjoy more. And it comes with more knowledge of the game, more technical ability. And that's not me having a dig at US soccer, but I do think it requires more technical and tactical awareness for sure.
Yeah. And obviously you came over, like you mentioned before, you were grateful to sort of be given the opportunity from the manager as well. How pleasing was that then, obviously, for yourself? Because like you say, it's difficult coming back from 2 injuries. You then change and come to a completely different country. And like you mentioned before, you may not play, but obviously having, got your contract with Durham, obviously recently signed the new contract as well. It must be really pleasing to see that actually, despite everything you've been through, that everything has paid off. And now you're over here in a fantastic competitive league. And obviously, you're happier now and it's all sort of worked out for you so far.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even like injuries aside, I think playing at this level was always a dream of mine, and I would like to keep pushing it. I'm not one to just sit and say, "Oh, I've made it." Like I always want more for myself, and that's something that I think has allowed me to get to where I am today. But yeah, I mean, all I wanted was a chance. So I am proud of where I am, and I'm proud of where I've came from. So it's huge for me to say that I play in the Women's Championship, and I come from Newtown Square, Pennsylvania, which is a small little town outside of Philadelphia. So it's amazing to say that, and I know my parents are proud, and that's what keeps me going as well. But yeah, no, it's incredible. I am proud of where I am today.
And we've got a question here from Ian. He says, does the knowledge you have suffered with these injuries affect the way you play now, or does it not make any difference?
To be honest, I thought it would play a part in the way I play today, but I think the way I was rehabbed the second time around, we did absolutely everything to prevent any fear. And I think coming back from an ACL injury, that's the biggest part that I found toughest the first time around. Was I was still afraid to do things. So when I was doing the second rehab process, we were doing different jumps, different landings, and it was all things to prevent me thinking about in a game. So it just came naturally. So now I feel like I'm playing without any fear, and I don't think about things, which is great. I mean, I have to give credit to the 2 people I worked with, but I don't think it affects the way I play now because of the way I rehabbed it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. John, I want to bring you in briefly before I pass over to Gareth. Obviously, you've got in place now sort of help for players. I'd probably say off the pitch. I suppose we can call it the mental side of the game, and obviously sort of linking into what I've been discussing. How do you go about that then from your side? Because obviously it's different, obviously, from sort of Get Pro Academy to professional football in terms of maybe your approach. But how does that sort of happen from your side?
What you mean through like mental health and stuff like that? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and obviously, like you've got ambassadors on board, haven't you, that sort of help with that as well, and can deliver workshops and are qualified in that as well. So yeah, just talk to me a little bit about that then.
Yeah, we've got a couple that are on board for mental health. That was a great question, by the way, because it is a traumatic thing having an injury. So to come back, have it twice is very hard on the mind. But yeah, we've got 2 ambassadors, mainly a girl called Abby, who she's almost personally been affected by it before, and I think that's a good way to have people working with you. They've experienced it, so they can talk from personal experiences and downtime and stuff like that. Plus, we're also linked heavily to Young Minds UK for anyone under the age of 24, 25 that have well, I wouldn't say mental health problems, just struggles. Let's just call it struggles, or a lot of challenges. And we leave the door open for any girl that we tend to find that a lot of young players come to coaches or rather than their parents if they've got something troubling them. I think that's natural what I've found, or more common what I've found with coaching lots of youngsters, especially girls. And they can contact us. A lot of them have contact details, or if they need it, Abby's happy to speak to anybody anytime. I've already said that Dee's happy. I mean, Dee put herself down as our mental health ambassador, but she can do the job, and she can do that. As I said, she's remarkable. We went to see Dee play at Watford, and she gave her time at the end of the game to meet Freya, one of our players, which made Freya's day, and it's those little things. The players tend to come over after the game, but it's just those little things, for that, to keep people happy. But going back to your actual question, sorry to go roundabout. We do have people on board that can help girls with struggles and mental health, or any challenges they've got at school, football, or normal life.
Yeah. Gareth?
And what support is there available at club level? Is it just like the group and the community that you've got together, or is there something more formal available for you?
I think that's for you, Dee.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I don't play for a women's club.
I thought John was going to carry on. Can you repeat the question? I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So, what support is there available for you, like at the club level? Is there anything kind of more formal and structured, or is it just that sense of community and togetherness that you've got as a group?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. To be honest, we have a team psychologist, and he comes to training almost every day, and he's been there. And anyone that needs him, he is always available. But I've been very, very lucky, and I think I don't know if most players can say this, but the team I'm with, the girls I'm with, are some of the best people I've ever met. And I know that if I ever needed anything, that they'd all be there and have my back and support me no matter what. And the same goes for the staff. So I am quite lucky to say that we have the option of going to a psychologist if we ever wanted to, but I feel very comfortable going to any of my teammates or staff, to be honest with you.
Kind of moving away from that, one thing that struck me over the last few years is how competitive the championship is now. I think at the start of the season, there were 4, 5, 6 teams that potentially could have gone on and won the title. And I think it was 8 points separating 2nd and 7th. Now the season's finished. How is that for you as a player, where kind of anybody can beat anybody in the league?
Yeah, no, that's one of the things too. When I first came here, it's mind blowing how competitive the women's championship is. And genuinely, you could go into one week and you'd think you'd get the 3 points and you won't. And you can't ever go into a game week thinking, oh yeah, this is a win, because every team is absolutely incredible. And I have to give credit to all the teams in our league. They put a battle in every week, and it's never easy. And even the likes of Liverpool that won this year, yes, they're backed by the men's team, but no team gave them just an easy win. It was always a battle. And I think the women's championship is definitely one of the best, even second divisions in the world, to be honest. Like, I don't think you'll ever get that level as a second division in women's football.
Yeah, I think that's something we've spoke a lot about, sort of between myself, John, and Gareth, of how competitive it is. And I think, you only have to look this season, sort of the teams towards the top. You've got those that are full time and, like you say, backed by a men's side. But I think what's great about Durham is that they've always been up there competing at the top. Yet, in terms of resources, in terms of, everything else, they've not got the finance of the likes of the Liverpools and things like that. And I think it's probably a credit to the club, that obviously they are up there fighting. What have you made of the season as a whole then? Obviously, we'll talk about, I think Connor's put on a question about playing against Man United, but the season as a whole, how have you found it maybe compared to sort of when you first signed, in terms of just everything like competitiveness and obviously the club growing and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a tough season, both physically and mentally. I think any season that lasts as long as ours does, I think it will be tough, both physically and mentally, to be honest with you. But in the same breath, I don't think we achieved what we wanted to achieve this year. I think we had every intention and opportunity to get promoted, and we just fell short of that. But going back to what we said earlier, it's just because the league is so competitive. And for a club that isn't backed by a men's team, we do really well. And I think part of it comes from the players that we have. A massive part of it is obviously the staff, but there's been a core group of players that have been at Durham and know each other in and out. And I think that is why the club is so successful, because of those players and because of the passion and drive they have within the club.
And I'll put Connor's comments on screen now. He talks about the Man United game. What were your thoughts on the atmosphere when they played Man United? He says it felt like a derby game for Man United fans that travelled up.
Oh, the atmosphere was one of the best things I've ever played at. We had a sellout crowd. I grew up a Manchester United supporter, so playing against a club that I always will have love for was cool in itself. They're in the WSL, so obviously it's one of the powerhouse teams in the WSL. But yeah, the atmosphere is, I genuinely think if we didn't have the fans at that game, I think it would have been a different story. So I have to give full credit to them, because they pushed us when we needed it. And I'm not going to lie, it felt incredible to score against them as well.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask about that. Obviously, scoring against the team you obviously supported, but obviously, I'm assuming as a player, then it's something that you relish, because you see those games coming up, and like you mentioned, you're testing yourselves not only against WSL opposition, but many international stars as well. Obviously, finished 2-2 and then went to a penalty shootout, but it must be sort of pleasing from yourself and obviously the squad's point of view to not only play against those people, but to really push as well. And obviously, again, referring back to sort of resources and things like that, there's a huge gap between the two. But is the cup game something where you look at those as like, what's the right word? Like something else extra to look forward to, or do you sort of prepare for it as just another game? Because obviously with it being, grouped for the Conti Cup, there is a chance to come up against those top teams. Is that something where people maybe pick out those games and think, oh, we've got Man United and we've got Man City, or is it just a case of it's another game, we're going to prepare for it, but we're going to give a good account because it's against, the best in the top tier, and obviously there's no pressure on yourselves?
Yeah, no, I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I think we think of it as another game, but it's also another massive opportunity for the club as a whole. I think we have to keep in mind that we're playing some of the best players in the world. With any WSL team, they're international players. They're playing in the top league in the world, to be honest. So it is an opportunity for us, but we prep it as just another game. So yeah, I would say it's a bit of both, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And John, do you want to come in on the championship? You were sort of talking about being equipped for the WSL, and obviously we're expanding on the competitive nature.
Yeah, it's very competitive. I've seen a couple of matches, obviously with Elenia at Watford, and as I said, went to see Durham play Watford, where we saw Dee play, and I do think Durham were very unlucky that game, but it was still very competitive. If you think where Watford are and Durham, I think were third or fourth at the time, it was a good game. But the way I see it is, the more competitive the championship is, with perhaps the addition of a couple of players, they're much more equipped to compete in the WSL. It's not like a gimme league and the top two go up and they're struggling. But I could see Durham, if they went up, from the players that I saw, they've actually got a really, really good side. And I'm not just saying that. They have got a really, really good side, and they could compete quite well in the WSL. So the teams that finished above them, they obviously could do as well. So yeah, I think it's really good for women's football. The tier 2 or championship, whatever you want to call it, is so competitive and is stacked with good players.
Yeah. Gareth?
And Dee, I just wanted to ask you about attendances. You mentioned the United game in the Cup being a sellout. I know that Durham had a big push to sell as many tickets as possible for the derby against Sunderland. And obviously this weekend as well, we've seen 22,000 go and watch Newcastle at St James's Park, which I believe is the biggest attendance in the league game in the country this season.
Mm-hmm.
How has it been for you to kind of see, even over the last kind of 18 months, 2 years, the growth in attendances over here?
Yeah, it's incredible. I think that's what anyone involved in women's football, anyone that supports women's football, that's what you want to see. I think it's getting some of the praise that it should finally. I don't think we're anywhere near where we should be, but it's unbelievable to sit on the couch on Friday night and turn on Sky Sports and see some WSL team. I think that's amazing. And as for Newcastle getting 22,000 at St. James's Park, I mean, that's not only incredible for Newcastle, it's amazing for the Northeast women's football as a whole. And it just goes to show that if we're given the platform, we can use it, and people want to come see us play, which is amazing.
Yeah. John, I'll come to you on that and sort of growing the game in the Northeast. And obviously, if we look at sort of the Lionesses squad at the minute, there's quite a few players that have sort of grown up in the Northeast. Oh, he's gone. Never mind. In that case, I'll come to you, Dee. Obviously, we're just talking about the Northeast and obviously it being good for the area. But it must be great for obviously yourselves at Durham, sort of, you know, having young girls look up for you, as I was just sort of saying there to John. You know, there's so many in that Lioness squad. You know, you think of likes of Lucy Bronze and Steph Horton. You know, it must be really pleasing, obviously, for yourselves. I know John mentioned it before about sort of, you know, young girls coming up and chatting and taking pictures after the game. But how do you find that now? Because I feel like it's not only, you know, massively increased, but it sort of helps in terms of growing it for like attendances, doesn't it? You know, you interacting with young girls. How do you find that in terms of like being a role model, whether that's yourself or the team in general?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I had a role model that she played at University of Virginia. She played at Portland Thorns, and she was just my idol. Anything she did, I wanted to do. So I know that for me now, as much as I enjoy playing, as much as I want to push, it's also about the next generation. And I think if we can, it's even as simple as like a hello or how are you doing, signing a booklet. I mean, it goes a long, long way. And I think those are the moments that young players keep, and it kind of drives them forward a bit. So yeah, I think it's amazing, and I think we have such a good setup at Durham. We have a lot of sister clubs in the area, so we try and invite them to all our home games. And we do like a different event as well, where they come and play in the morning and then come watch us play in the afternoon. But the last game of the season, we sold out for Sunderland as well, and a lot of the sister clubs came, and there was over 1,000 people that we got to see and interact with, and hopefully that will carry on to next year and we can even sell more tickets. So it's incredible, really. Yeah.
John, just before you disappeared, we're sort of talking about obviously the Northeast and some of the Lionesses squad coming from there and the impact of attendance. And obviously Dee was talking about there about being a role model and, you know, having sort of people coming back and, you know, young girls partnering with the club. I wanted to talk to you obviously on the Wildcats program and things like that. And obviously opportunity, because I know, again, you know, through what you do with academies and things like that, there's all sorts of different avenues. But do you want to just talk to me about sort of the impacts of not only those sessions and partnering with clubs, but also in terms of, you know, getting girls involved in football and coming down to sessions as well?
Yeah, I mean, what Dee was saying Durham do, and we are hoping in the next 12 months to be expanding sort of up into the Northeast. We've touched the Northwest with you, Matt, as you know. I think more clubs should do it. I don't think it's done enough where, you know, they invite young girls to come to matches. It doesn't cost them a lot to give away a few tickets, especially when parents come or siblings come, you know, and I think it does help. We try and partner up. We sometimes get tickets from Reading, also Brentford. We tried to start a scheme with Watford, which didn't quite transpire last year, but it might do next year, hopefully. We're talking to Brentford about getting tickets, some sort of freebies for the Spain game. You know, a lot of them are out there, league games, because it's played at the Community Trust Stadium. So we try our best. You know, obviously there's still a long way to go, as Dee said before, with girls football. We approach schools as well locally when we're opening up new centres. We've got one opening up next week in Wokingham. We've got one opening up towards the end of May in Sevenoaks, and we go around to local schools or sessions for the girls to see. We make sure the training they get isn't what they could do at home on their own. Otherwise, why would they pay us to coach them? You know, we were doing second and third phase with our under 11s last night, stuff that they've probably never even seen before. And it's just all about delivery to them, making sure that if it doesn't go right, which it won't first time, that they're encouraged to continue. And when you get 11-year-olds picking up stuff like that, you know, 4, 5, 6, 7 passes across the pitch, spreading the play, it just shows you that there are a lot of talented girls out there. They just need encouragement and, you know, the right direction. And players like Dee, as I said, and I know a lot of the girls at United give their time up after the game, and you know, it goes a long way. You know, it does go a long way. And I think the more girls you can get into actual matches, and the clubs do need to give incentives, I think the more girls will come to sessions like what we run, and even, you know, join local teams and perhaps make a greater demand for more teams in their areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Gareth, you wanted to sort of touch on a little bit of international football as well?
Yeah, excuse me. Obviously, the Euros this year, finally getting around to those happening in England. Just how big do you think, the question for both of you really, how big do you think the impact of that's going to be? I think after the World Cup in 2019, we kind of saw a jump in participation and interest. Do you think that's going to happen even more so now it's a tournament that we're hosting?
Yeah, I can go first. I definitely think so. I think it's one thing seeing players on the TV, and I think that's amazing in itself, and it's such a massive step forward for the women's game. But I think seeing games in person and like we said before, meeting players after the game, getting something signed, it inspires kids. It really does. Like, I think it's more meaningful than probably we can even think of. But I know for me, when I was growing up and I had my role model, anything she did for me, I was like, oh my goodness, this is huge. So having the Euros and not only being able to see England play in their home country play, but seeing some of the best players in the world, like players from Spain, France, like all over, it's just going to be amazing to see, really.
John?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's really important that England have a good tournament. Whether you support the first 11 or not, I think it's important that we get behind them as a nation, because it's only going to help women's football in England, which is what we all want. Whether we all agree or not, we're all trying for the same goal, for women and girls football to grow, and that will definitely be helped in this country by England having a good tournament. So I think we should get behind them. And I don't think, I know people say, oh, it's on telly. I don't actually think people realise how important the Sky Sports deal is. It might only be, I don't know, 3 matches every fortnight or however much it is. But there's a stigma about women's football. Even now, I don't care what anybody says, that it's not good, it's not competitive, it's not skillful, it's not challenging. And you get even at the Watford game, you get people slating players, and it's just wrong. But I think being on telly, it does encourage people to then go and watch the next game live if they're local. And that's very, very important. And I just hope that drops down to the championship, because we have mentioned how competitive the championship is. And there'd be a lot of better games in the championship that's on Sky than some of the EFL games you get. And perhaps that is me being disrespectful. I don't mean to be, but we all want to see good football. And the television deal is huge, just because it gets more people interested. And you see a couple of those games, and all it can do is, whet the appetite to go and watch a live one.
Yeah. And obviously, in terms of Durham, D, you've got Sarah Robson, who will be with Northern Ireland, obviously, at the Euros. Do you want to talk to me about the potential impact of that as well? Because I suppose anybody watching that maybe, either follows Northern Ireland has got, obviously, if they're looking at that and thinking, oh, well, actually, my favourite player is Sarah Robson, I might go and check out Durham. Just sort of the impact of international football. Obviously, we talked about attendances before, but getting people involved. And also, I believe you've got plans as well yourself to hopefully get into the Ireland team. If you want to talk to us about that before we finish.
Yeah, of course. Well, first and foremost, I have to give Sarah a massive shout out because she's an absolute legend. Some of the stuff she does on the football pitch is frightening. So I'm super excited to see her play and see her crush it in the Euros, because she always does. But as for just the Northeast in general, I think having a player like Mac in the Euros is going to be huge. I think for some reason, I think the Northeast gets a little bit of a stick, and I don't understand why, because there's so many amazing football players that have grown up in the Northeast and are now playing at Man City. I mean, look at Jill Scott. She's an absolute legend as well. Jordan Nobbs is up from here as well. There's so many players from the Northeast, and I think having a player like Mac just brings more, not publicity, but more awareness to the Northeast football and how good it actually is. I know there's a lot more teams in the likes of London, because London is massive, but it is huge for us to have a player like Mac and then have her as a teammate as well. It's a big honor, to be honest. But as for the Irish national team, yeah, it's always been a dream of mine to even just get to a camp. Both my parents are from Ireland, so it'd be a huge honor to represent the country, and hopefully I can get that opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I want to say a big thank you, Dee. We have come to the end of the show. It's been really great listening to your story, and obviously, chatting women's football, and obviously John as well. Thank you to you for providing the insight in terms of young girls, and Gareth as well. We are back on Thursday. John will be back. He's chatting the race for the Champions League. Obviously, that will be going down to the final game of the season. So join us then. Thank you to everyone as well that's tuned in once again, and thank you for the comments, and we will see you on Thursday. Cheers.
Thanks so much.